think like it's it's weird. It's hard in a rewarding way, and you don't really realize how many variables there is in kids themselves, the way that your emotions are and how you act. And then I think the older they get and the more brain capacity they have, the challenges become bigger.
Okay.
But you overcome the challenge, and it's like because they're older, you get to sort of celebrate the win with them instead of just being like, all right, I got him to school on time or whatever. When, like, say this morning, it was like we all got Oscar to school this morning because he put his shoes on correctly, he's got his hat, he's got his thing, he's carried his bag to the car, and those little wins that you're like, okay, we can celebrate this together instead of it just being me getting in the car and take a big sigh of relief.
Is it more challenging because they become naturally a little bit more rebellious and curious at
Oh
this
yeah,
age?
yeah. They love to push the limits. Oscar is give him an inch, he'll take a mile. I was the same at his age, which will benefit him. I like looking back now, me thinking like, okay, I wouldn't be anywhere where I am now without taking a mile when someone gave me an inch, because I think that's what pushed you to the next level of what you were going to do or whatever it is. Like, I remember my mum would be like, yes, I could do something, and it might be something that's not, I don't know how to explain it, but it might be next time I'll just do it without asking. But sometimes I would learn a lesson that way, and other times it would be like, okay, well, Mum would say, I gave you that little bit of room and you took too much. So I could learn that lesson too, which I think Oscar will be good for him down the track, for sure.
Yeah, how do you balance trying not to sort of wean that out of them, being
Yeah.
like liberal enough that they still have a little bit of autonomy and agency,
Yeah.
but they're not making it feel like they can just run amok and get away with anything?
Yeah, they got to respect the boundary, for
Yeah.
sure.
Is that a hard line at home?
It is pretty hard line with me. My wife she's a bit of rubber arm. She's a bit more of an enabler, as I call her. Her dad is the most patient man in the world, and also like you can just tell that he's so maternal that he lets them get away with murder, which I love and I hate, because I've got it, like, sometimes it's like, oh, but he does so much for us that I don't mind if it's innocent things. And I think there's a lot of her dad in April where I actually listened this morning, and the kids were asked, it was like 6:30 in the morning, and the kids wanted to play with something that I felt that might be inappropriate for the time, in terms of like, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, like, chill out, guys. But I could hear her say, like, hesitantly sort of say, yeah, okay, yeah. And then she was like, no, they're going to be okay. And it sort of worked out. But for me, I'm the bad guy, but I think someone's got to draw the line in the sand especially with little kids. There's nothing worse than like going out into the world and your kid doesn't know where a boundary is, I think.
Oh, absolutely. Like some kind of street smarts, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned that April's a bit of an enabler and you're more of the hard ass at home, because I often hear that it's the opposite.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I often hear from people that, dad gets to be the fun guy,
Mm.
mum's got to be serious.
Yeah, I think dads are silly. I think the way, if you go into your parenting and think, you get to be silly, and you can I feel like dads can make a fool of themselves much more. Mum's a bit more presentable. You know what I mean? And like, for me, I can be the silly dad, and I'm, like, carrying around kids around the house and doing something dumb, and everyone's getting a kick out of it. But then I think there's a fine line between that and you've got to draw the line. You can't be fun all the time, unfortunately, because they'll just run over you. And Oscar's so smart, man. He's so switched on, and that he'll find a way to walk over the top of me psychologically, I reckon, at some point.
So, like, you've been a dad for 6 and a bit years now, right? Does fatherhood mean something different now than it did in the early stages.
Yeah, 100%.
How does that change?
Fatherhood now is, I don't know, I feel much more of a responsibility now to shape, especially having a boy, to shape the boy into a respectful part of society. I think now, and I hear him talk how I talk, which I don't mind. Like I've always been one to swear around the house. My parents never swore, so I would do it secretly, and I think that's worse. But I have overheard him just sometimes talk to his sister, like he's only learning, he's only little, and I'm like, hey, you can't talk to someone like that. And it's of late, I feel like I've got way more of a responsibility to shape that generation within my family. And previously it was sort of like survival. I feel like I've poked my head up now and I can see what's happening and try and do the best I can.
Do you feel in control, a little bit out of control of that? Because obviously, like, this generation of parents has a new challenge, right? Which
Yeah.
is there is a whole world outside of the home that kids are exposed to that you and I didn't grow up with.
And it's so much more accessible.
For sure. So, like, how in control versus out of control do you feel?
I feel in control of what I can control. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And look, kids are going to be kids. They're going to do what they're curious. I love that about my kids, that they're really curious. And every kid I meet is really curious. I think the stuff I can't control, I don't like to dwell on. I think if it's going to happen, then the things I can control around that was what important. Because if, they're going to go out, they're going to learn things about the world that they're going to love and they're going to hate, just like we do every day as adults. But yeah, I think I focus more on what I can control because that's, at the moment, that's what's important. And then also as well, the kids can see that dad's got control of this. And I like to think that, yes, I'm a parent, but I'm also leading these guys as best as I can. So if there's going to be things out of my control, they can go into it with a controlled mindset for sure.
It's interesting. The last time we caught up, which we were debating whether it's a year, 2 years, somewhere in between.
Something like that.
You said right at the start of that episode, because I re-listened to it yesterday, that you often hide behind your hat and your moustache.
Yeah.
Those watching
Still
today will
doing
see
it.
that you still have a hat and moustache, but I must say that I feel like over the last year and a half that, I've had that conversation with you and seen you online and in conversation through your podcast with Matt and all the other good work you do, is I feel like you're not hiding behind anything anymore as such, but you're a little bit more out in front of your vulnerability. There's like a new lens of honesty there, which I feel like I felt that in our episode then, but it feels even a little bit more liberal now. I wonder is that encouragement to be more vulnerable and open part of being that example for Oscar?
For sure. I think in a world now where it's sort of like this toxic masculinity is so present, and because everything is online now and kids are so easily influenced and young people are so easily influenced, I think I made a conscious effort to stop hiding behind the hat, the humor and the mustache and start embracing it. It's just part of my identity. I feel like I've evolved so much since we caught up last time. I think differently. I feel differently. I try and put myself, I try and become comfortable with the uncomfortable as much as possible now in learning.
What's been the antithesis of that? Like, where does that desire to want to be more vulnerable and open come from?
I think I definitely want my kids to be able to, I do say to them, I say, look, I would prefer you to be honest with me and open with me at all times and be able to tell me something, tell me anything. But I felt like I wasn't practicing that in my real life. I feel like I wasn't honest with myself and open with myself with all sorts of things in my life. And I wasn't as putting my front foot forward as best as I could, and I wanted my kids to be able to see what I do and go, okay, well, I want to be like that. And I felt like I needed to change certain aspects of my life and my thinking and my behaviors to reflect one that that's respectful.
It's interesting because this conversation, as you mentioned before, around masculinity is more present than ever.
Mm.
And I can't speak to history before our time, but I feel pretty confident in saying that I can't imagine it was spoken about the way that it's spoken about today.
Mm.
And I think that this idea of being a gentleman, being a good man in the world, is something that you see and recognize as opposed to a definition on a piece of
Yeah.
paper. I think we're trying too hard as a society to, find a couple words that depict it,
Mm.
as opposed to, for like my whole life, I was blessed to just look at my old man and go, that's all I need to be in the world. If I'm like half the man that he is, if I'm kind, gentle, look after my family, supportive, funny, all the great things that my dad is.
Mm.
If I can move like that through the world, then I know that I'm a good person. I
Yeah.
feel like it's easier to see it and recognize it than it is to clearly define it.
Yeah, I feel like your actions are way more important than your words.
Yeah.
And like for me, I'm very blessed that I get to do what I do for a job, and that's have a parenting podcast with Matt, and we get to talk to people from all walks of life about their journeys and experts along the way, that you pick up little things. And like this there was so long there as a dad that I felt like I'm just telling my kids something instead of actually doing something that they can look and go, oh, okay. And I do notice that when even the way that I treat my kid's mother, which is my wife, the way that I treat her around them, and I can see it rubbing off. They fucking love their mum, and so do I. And it's like the way that April and I interact, I can see them doing the same. And if I was just to talk about being like that, they wouldn't see it and they wouldn't mimic it, they wouldn't reflect it. And I think I've been way more conscious in validating emotions and really understanding why they're getting worked up. And same with my wife, like I can pick it out now where I'm like, okay, well, you need something from me, and I know that how I can help you. Like my wife is an amazing at her job, but sometimes she gets overwhelmed, and I can see her in her own brain, and I'll pick it apart on paper so that she can help understand what she's feeling. And the kids watch me do that and watch me try and put her mind at ease, and then her have some sort of relief, and the kids can go, well, that's how I should be acting. And I'm thankful that I feel like at the moment my relationship with my kids is the best it's ever been.
That's a nice feeling.
Mm.
It sounds like you have like a new clarity.
I do. I spent a lot of years suppressing my emotions and sort of coping and feel like I'm just in survival, when now I'm not in survival. I'm ahead of that. I feel like I'm not out here surviving. I'm out here thriving.
Yeah, I love to hear that, mate. Tell me about your old man. I feel like we didn't talk about sort of like your family growing up when
Yeah.
we spoke last time. What was your relationship with your dad like?
Pretty good. I mean, we're so alike. I feel like we clashed a lot, as young boys do with their dads. I think as I'm getting older, I I feel I feel I feel like I'm seeing him more, like in terms of like I'm seeing what he was like. And he was very present as much as he could be. He was sort of like off to work, back the next day. I would see back sorry, that later that day I would see him as much as possible. But I feel like we butt heads so much because we are so alike. I'm trying to recognize that way more now, that
Mm.
um, yeah, he said something to me when his dad died. He said to me, he goes, I can't remember the last time I hugged my father. That was a couple of days after he died. And he said, I don't want us to be like that. And I think since then, we've both consciously made little tweaks in how we communicate with each other, and so that we can maintain a relationship, because it's really hard to like, think about that maybe over those teenage years in my 20s that I think we were just our egos just got in the way. We weren't ever, thankfully we were always very civil. I don't think we really argue that much, but you could tell that there was difference of opinion in some things. And my mum would always be like, make sure you call your father, and I would
Are
go,
they still
yeah,
together?
yeah. And now he's retired, he's at home and he has time. It's like, I feel like I want to be better than, if I can be better than he was, better than his relationship with his dad was, then it can potentially dribble down to, so then when Oscar and I are fully grown adults, I already am, but when he is, we'll have more of a friendship than so we can, I'd love that if he would to ring me up and consider me a mate and stuff like that. And I feel like I'm starting to do that a little bit more with my dad in the later years.
Do you find that it's easy to have that kind of dialogue with your dad, where it's open and honest about this development of the relationship and those feelings?
I think that's still hard. I think we both acknowledge it in our own way, and we both are putting in a bit more effort for sure. And I respect that of him, and I'm happy that it's going in the right direction. Like, yeah, I feel like we communicate a lot better these days. Like, instead of just being at each other, or my old man I get a lot of my mannerisms, my humor, the way I talk. My dad was a salesman from way back and has always been so good at building relationships and building rapport, and everyone loves him. And I felt like I didn't fall into that category of like, I felt like I was his son and he loved me, but that was it. And I didn't put in, as I got older, I didn't put in enough effort either. That there's things that we didn't see eye to eye on, but like now I'm like, okay, I rang him the other day. I was on the way home from Wollongong, believe it or not, and I spoke to him for 30 minutes in the car, and that's the longest I'd ever spoken to him on the phone, I think. Now looking back at it, when he would call his dad when he was alive, and it would be, I'll put your mother on and hand the phone over. And I don't want it to be like that.
What do you think that barrier is? Because I feel like that's not an uncommon thing. It's not an uncommon thing for a guy in his 30s to want to develop a deeper, more honest connection with his father, with his dad, because that feels, for some reason, it feels like there's almost like permission that needs to be granted from both sides sometimes to be like emotionally open with each other.
Yeah, there's definitely a disconnect for sure. I feel like, yeah, it's...
Would you tell your mum that you loved her on the phone?
Yeah.
Would you tell your dad?
Not as easily.
Yeah, see, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't know, and it's... Yeah, I can't put a finger on it, but I feel like, and I started to notice it with Oscar, that you see so much of yourself in them, and unfortunately your subconscious might see parts of you that you haven't addressed about yourself.
Okay.
Because it's like my daughter, I'm like, you definitely parent them differently for sure, but my daughter, it's like, she just melts my heart when I look at her, and my son, it's like, it's a different dynamic, and I'm not sure what it is. There'd be someone who can explain it, but it's like you see you see so much of your younger self, and you're like, okay, well, maybe there's things that you're not happy with from your past that you don't want to see your son go through that too.
It's almost, people have that conversation around like if I could speak to my younger self. It's almost you
Yeah.
get the chance to do that when you got a son as a
Yeah,
as a
it's like
dad.
it's like me looking back at me
Yeah.
sometimes. You're like, fuck, I did that. And you didn't.
Scary, comes with a lot of responsibility, but
Absolutely.
also an incredible opportunity.
Yeah, I see. I think with Oscar and I would love for our relationship to flourish forever. I think when I was a teenager with my dad, excuse me,
You're right.
um, it was sort of like I felt like it was a way more father-son relationship where like it was like kind of like me against him and him against me in a way, instead of when really it was just the way that we showed love. When I think with Oscar, I want to be way more. I want to be way more emotionally in tune with him, so that it's like, okay, he can bring anything to me. I felt like as a kid I couldn't bring everything to my dad because it would be met with, he's my dad, and there's going to be some sort of repercussions with Oscar. It's like, I want you to be able to bring it to me so we can talk about it and understand whether it's the right or the wrong thing to do without it being necessarily known as a repercussion. I'd like it to be like, all right, well, you've done the wrong thing here. Do you understand why it's the wrong thing? Please don't do it again. Because, if you don't learn from it, then there will be repercussions next time. And I feel like that might be that generation that we couldn't take things to them as openly as I would have liked now looking back.
I also wonder how much of it is this dynamic of, at some point the son feels like his dad has been the man and he needs to become a man himself. And so
Mm,
that act of like rebellion or the butting of heads is sometimes their way of saying, hey, I'm now my own man in the world. I need to make my own decisions, whether you agree with that or not.
mm,
And even if you don't disagree with what your dad thinks you should do at this point in time,
mm.
by choosing to rebel against that is suggesting that it's time that I take responsibility for my own decisions.
Yeah, I think there's definitely. I mean, I remember as a young man growing up in a trade, doing an apprenticeship. You're sort of like, I feel like you jump the gun on your own maturity sometimes. So you're
Because you're
like,
around older men.
yeah, it was like, okay, well, I want to go from being this boy to, a man, but you don't really have the education or the tools to do that. You're sort of doing it in your way, and everyone's the same. You want to step out from your family and be your own
Mm.
person, man, woman, whatever it might be. That you feel like the only way to do that is to rebel sometimes. And I was a typical teenager. I got arrested. I did dumb stuff. I picked up from the cop station at 3 a.m. in the morning. All the you stole my dad's beers. I did all of
Yeah.
that stuff. I crashed their car, wrote my mum's car, brand new car off. I've done it all. I've done all those sort of things that you would expect from a teenager trying to navigate their way. Um, because I obviously I didn't have the tools or anything like that, because I was still learning it myself. That maybe like back then it was just like mum and dad were the easiest targets to rebel against, I guess, in a way.
It's interesting for me because I've thought about this quite a bit, right? I feel so blessed. I have a beautiful relationship with both my parents, but when we talk about that, son dad dynamic, my dad was amazing. My dad was like my best friend, where we had this very tight relationship where we went to the gym together, from the age of me being like 14. We watched every game of footy for the weekend together. Like we did everything together. My mates would go out when we were like 16, 17. And I was like, I think I'm just going to hang out with my dad.
Yeah, right.
Like we had a really tight relationship. And I think there's a lot, I think that's because of the human that he is. I think it's also got a lot to do with my health and how I valued that family relationship from early on. But I never rebelled against my dad. And I've heard the story 1,000 times, like you suggested there, of, young guy goes out into the world and does that a little bit to become his own man. I think I almost waited for my dad's permission.
Yeah, right, okay.
which I don't know whether that was maybe me being a little bit passive, whether it was me respecting my dad so much that I wanted him to almost hand the baton over to me.
Mm.
But thankfully, I think he did a really good job of giving me that permission
Yeah.
without me asking for it.
Mm.
And I see that now in the way that my mum is very risk averse.
Mhm.
And so when I tell my mum about something, her first thought is almost like to think about all the potential challenges and negatives
Yeah.
and manage the risk, where my dad is very like, yep, you'll figure it out.
Mm.
You know what you got to do. And I think that is almost his way of saying, hey, like, yeah, you're your own man in the world.
Yeah.
Like, if you think it's right, you do it. And I think as a son, you crave that from your dad
You do.
a little bit, that little tip of the hat,
Yeah, yeah. Like you're on the right path, sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Like, yeah, it. My old man, like for example, my old man hates every single tattoo I have, and he's got to the point where he doesn't address me about it. He'll address mum about it, which mum will address me about
Yeah.
it. That old thing, right? And that's right. At this time it went. I was at my back. I just had my back done, and I went to Bad Bunny with my sister. So I have a really great relationship with my sister. There's only the two of us, which is great. And she said to me, we're on the way, and she said, "Oh, you're gonna give Dad another heart attack." I was like, "Why is that?" She's like, "Well, he whinged to Mum about your tattoo, then Mum whinged to me, and now I'm whinging to you. It's gone full circle." So, and like, I respect that he doesn't mention it anymore because
Yeah.
he sort of grew up in the generation where if you had tattoos, you were a criminal. You
Yeah.
know, that's just the way it is.
Well, mate, you were, to be fair. You wrote the
I
car
was,
off.
yeah. To be fair, yeah. I wonder if I had a tattoo when I did that.
Yeah.
No, just later in life. But yeah, he's sort of stopped addressing it and just getting on with it, which is his way of accepting.
Yeah.
He's just like, oh, okay, well, he can't control me, but he can, and he doesn't have to love it, doesn't have to like it, but he's kept his mouth shut about it to me, which is a step forward, I think, and it's probably been better for our relationship, definitely.
I wonder, and this is something that I think I always ebb and flow on and feel an internal struggle around. Do you ever feel complete as a man? Do you ever feel like you're living up to that responsibility 100% of the time?
No, I feel like we evolve and we adapt and we change so much that you could never be complete. Like if you're complete, then you've got nothing else to strive towards or look forward to, or like I feel like my family is complete. Obviously, I've had a vasectomy, so that I feel like that's complete.
That
but
usually does it.
that would
Yeah.
that would usually do it. I feel like that part of my chapter in terms of like it's complete as a unit.
Mm.
It's more now. How can we best equip ourselves to overcome what's next? And for me, to be complete as a man, I don't think would exist, because I know that for me, there's always going to be something else. I feel like what's the next thing, and this thing's not going to be the last thing, because if at the moment I'm 102 days sober.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That's a journey I'm on. I don't know if it'll be forever, but I know that that's the journey I'm on right now. But doesn't mean that once I don't feel like drinking again, I'm complete and finished that. Or it doesn't mean that for now, like I'm really interested in how I react to things that happens with my kids, because it could be like Oscar, for example. If he hurts himself, you hurt yourself. I validate the emotion you've hurt yourself. I've noticed where you've hurt yourself and how you've hurt yourself, and that yes, it fucking hurts. I get it, and I understand that. And you have every right to be upset, but I'm trying to understand. Okay, well, you're upset about this, and then you continue to be upset. What else is it? Because we've acknowledged that we've done that, and it's like, I'm trying to work on being way more emotionally in tune. But when I get to the point that I'm happy with there, I'm definitely not complete as a man, because it's like, what's next for me? Like, I want to make sure that my relationship with my wife is as strong as it possibly can be, both both physical and emotionally. And for me, I feel like I'm the sort of person I'll never sit still. I'm very impatient, and I think there'll always be the next thing. I would never consider myself complete.
What you mentioned there about the kids and managing that emotion, I found it interesting. The other day I was listening to, his name is Jordan Stevens, I believe. He's British guy. I think bit of a multifaceted artist, talented guy.
Is he the Jordan? Who am I thinking of? I might be thinking of Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, not Jordan Peterson. He's a bit of a cool cat. Youngish guy, like somewhere between our ages. He was on Pete Wicks' podcast, Man Made.
Okay, yeah.
And I was listening to this conversation. He was talking about, he wrote a book called ADHD. One of I think the last D being an acronym for dogs. He talked about how his affinity for dogs and relationship with dogs. And I'm a dog man myself. I've got a little guy that I love and adore. And he made this really interesting point about how dogs are very in the moment, right? We know that because a dog enjoys what a dog is doing right now. Dog isn't thinking about what happened yesterday, isn't stressed about what's happening tomorrow. But even from an emotional standpoint, if you accidentally step on their paw, they squeal straight away. But then once they've had that immediate squeal, then it's gone. Like they address their emotion in the moment. I thought it was really interesting because kids are a bit similar. Kids feel an emotion in the moment, they express it immediately.
Oh, yeah.
And you deal with it and you move on from it. But us as adults, we have this weird thing where we hold it in and we wait until it kind of combusts out of us. I think especially as guys.
Yeah, we hold it, we suppress it. Like there's a lot of things I'm dealing with at the moment that was suppressed by alcohol. And it's a lot of like criticism and self-criticism almost, like I haven't had to deal with it for like 20 years because I've just done nothing but drink to numb it and silence it because I thought that was the right thing to do. But like, yeah, it's like with kids, the emotion, you can have 3 or 4 different emotions in a span of 10 minutes. And then you'd ask them about it an hour later and they'd be like, what? Because they're not holding onto it like you're holding, like we're holding onto it. Not now anyway. They might subconsciously hold on to something and then address it in a few years' time where it's like, okay, well, I've got the cognitive sense to think about that now and think about how that affected me. Like last year, I did a lot of digging with Matt around, my kid going to this primary school I went to, and I was just a bit overwhelmed with things that were bringing up, things that I never thought twice about as a child that now, like, I'm like remembering, I'm like, fuck, actually that it's sitting with me for a reason.
Are you comfortable sharing any of that stuff?
Oh, there was like I remember we were talking to Jen Muir about kids going back to school after holidays. And that was the worst time of my life, was going back to school after school holidays. This fear of abandonment. And it wasn't addressed. Like my mum did the best that she could do with what she had, which she had to go to work and we would walk to the bus stop together, which is great. And my school was right at the bus stop there. And she would, wish me off to school. But I was so upset about it. But she had to go and, make money so we could live. So I felt like at the time, I just would have to go to school and be sad and be upset about it and sort of sit alone with it. That it sort of now I think if someone validated that back then maybe some of my fears, like I feel like I've got to go, I can't be alone. I'm working on that now. Like I'm doing jobs and stuff alone. And that includes the alcohol was like a best friend, right? But like, for example, I do whenever I do like a work trip, like to the States or something like that, I'll take someone with me just purely for the fact that I've got another set of ears there to hear anything that I've got that I'm going through at the time. But also as well, like if I don't have someone there, I isolate. And like I feel like this sense of, you know, back then where if it was validated, maybe I wouldn't have this feeling where I can't be alone. Because I was so sad when it happened. Like that's just one of the things. And it was like, yeah, it was sort of now looking back, and I think to myself, like, okay, well, now my kid's going to go through the same thing. What can I do as a parent to validate how he feels about having to go back to school when he's spent 2 weeks with me and had the best time ever? And even though school is so much fun, he loves it, but there's always that anxiety around it. And it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do when we get to that point where I'm like, hey, I've got to go off to work. I can see you're upset. And the thought of it breaks my heart. There was one day where Oscar went to school and it's a long path, his school. You can see sort of the first part of the path before he gets to the school. And there's a fence. And I sort of like got in the car and I looked down. And I usually what I'll do is I'll see him off and I'll stop and I'll wait. And I'll wait for him to go out of sight before I go. Because I just don't know. Some days you just want to make sure he's okay. And this day he looked back and just burst into tears. And thankfully, what I do for a job, I can be flexible. And I was like, all right, let's go. Come back, and what's up? Let's validate it. Let's spend the time. He went to school that day, but we spent some time talking about it. And he might not have understood how he felt. But I understood exactly how he felt because I had lived it. And unfortunately, I would have to go and deal with it on my own around a bunch of other kids who are ruthless, because they don't understand the emotion either. So yeah, it's like that happened once, and I've got Macy going to go to school next year, and it's like, for me, I would love my kids to get to my age now and go, okay, well, my dad was so emotionally in tune with us, and that's what would hopefully that would define me as part of being the man that I am.
You mentioned the sobriety journey, which I know has sounded like there's been some duality in the experience, some positive because you get that new clarity, you're getting rid of a crutch, but with getting rid of a crutch comes a whole heap of challenges by the sound of that stuff that starts to push up to the surface.
Yeah.
I guess it's that analogy of like, when you're in a pool and you're trying to push a ball below the surface and the minute like you kind of slip off it, it explodes up.
Yeah.
Like, what's that been like?
It's been really surprising. Matt and I worked out that this is the longest I've had off alcohol for 21 years. I'd done little stints here and there, but nothing that would actually benefit me. It was just more a break. And that's what this was going to be. It was going to be a break over summer to challenge myself, to feel better, to look better, to be better, and work on that. But it was only going to be a break.
What inspired that?
I think I was just exhausted. Yeah. I think the last couple of years have been such a whirlwind for me. It also comes with what I do. Like I get whisked away to do jobs somewhere and overfed and alcohol and the social. It's just easier to swim with the tide than to swim against it at that point. Last year I was diagnosed with ADHD, which was no surprise to anyone. But glad I did it just for the understanding of my brain, and I'm really enjoying understanding, how my brain is working. But then when I stopped, I think I always thought once I get to like, 2 months, you think, okay, well, I'm past the hardest part, but that wasn't the case. The case was like I was really just entering the hardest part.
And what do you think what's that identification like when you're going from 2 months, you've maybe broken the habit?
Yeah, I feel like I wasn't craving it. I wasn't craving the drink. It was now my inner monologue was telling me how easy that it was more like whatever I did, my brain was saying you were shit at that. And there's a really easy way to stop me from telling you we're shit at that, is that's just to numb me and silence me.
Why do you think those emotions come up?
I don't know, but I remember having a vivid conversation with Matt. We did a record, a really good one. It was great. There was no problems with that. Then I left that record straight to a shoot with the Manly Sea Eagles. Everything went as best as it could within my control. The content came out fine. There was no dramas, but for some reason I wasn't happy with anything that happened that day. And I remember sitting there with April and the kids weren't home yet. And I was like, why? There is no reason for me to be negative, but my head is so negative right now. And then I was at a point where I was like feeling that every day. And then getting to the end of the day and being so exhausted and thinking to myself, I can't handle another 30 years of this. The reality is that the dark places are dark, and the feeling of, because everyone can tell you that you're worthy and that you're doing a great job, but if your brain's telling you that you're not, it trumps anything that anyone's going to say to you. And April was trying her best to understand it, but the reality of it is that I didn't want to be here anymore. And this is a month ago. I was like, well, I can't do this anymore because it was too exhausting. And if I've got to drink for the rest of my life to silence this voice, what sort of life is that? So I feel like, thankfully, I've done years and years of therapy and continue to, and gave myself opportunities to go, okay, well, it's exhausting. You need to talk to someone about it. That just get to that next appointment that you can talk to someone who can help you about it, because it could have easily gone a different way. If I didn't have those years of experience with therapy, I would have just thought the easiest way out is to end it. And that's the thought, when it's not. You're just shifting the way you feel onto someone else, which is my kids, my wife, my parents, my sister. So acknowledging that the first 60 days wasn't the hardest part was actually felt like a relief. I remember my therapist, who I bumped into at the shops this morning, actually. Remember, she said to me, she said, I know you set out just to have this break, but you're on a journey now. You're on this journey. That so many people want to be on this journey where you are. So don't take it for granted. And just being able to give myself and my kids the best version of me is a huge motivation to keep going. I see it in them. See it in me.
And I guess they're mirrors, right? For how you feel about yourself, how you're showing up in the world.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I can see those kids are proud. If that makes sense, because I'm proud.
Makes perfect sense. You should be really proud of that. That's an incredible feeling, I can imagine.
It is, and you said like there is the negatives that come with it. I'm not going to sit here and say the positives outweigh them. Absolutely not. Like, I feel healthy, I feel better, I sleep better, all these great things, which is true. But in some cases, like in mine in particular, and that's all I can really talk to, is that I feel like it's the hardness of it and the negative things that do come up emotionally have been laying there for so long, they're going to overpower the positive things, and that's what they want. That's what it wants to do, so that you can go back to the terrible habit that I had. But yeah, the real work is not pushing them away, but acknowledging them and seeing how they can work for me instead of me working for them.
Is there some kind of mental reprieve, mental and emotional reprieve by acknowledging that it's going to take time? Or does that not help at all?
It definitely helps. I think what helps the most is that I am in control of that. I might not be able to be in control of my environment all the time, but I can be in control of what I'm doing. And I feel like I would never think that I would have, in the thick of my drinking, I would think I have zero control. And then that thinking turns into, what's the point? If I've got no control, then what's the point of trying to get the control? And I feel like for the first time in my life, I have control over my decisions, I've never worked on this much brain capacity before. That's what I feel like.
Limitless.
I feel like that. I feel like I've dulled myself for so many years that I don't know. I haven't known what it's like to be this guy, and I'm definitely starting to like him. It's exhausting too, though, still. And you just got to, I'm in control of today, and I get to decide how the day ends and how tomorrow starts instead of the other way around.
I like that line you just said. I feel like I'm starting to like him. I feel like that is that's that ever evolving journey. You said right of, never knowing that you'll never be complete, but you're always on that path of trying to find peace with yourself, trying to find that level of contentment. Is there coping mechanisms that have been helpful?
Yeah, I mean, this time around when I was just so ready, like looking back in the end of last year, where I'd set out that last year to have a bit of a chill year and not that turned the complete opposite, where I was just away every week and working on good things and experiencing good things that are going to be great for, my future. But I wasn't experiencing them wholeheartedly. And I was just physically ill. I just did not feel okay. I was worried about my health. I set a date in mind where I didn't book anything else after that. I didn't say yes to any more events, yes to any, even like the thick of Christmas parties. I was like, nah, not doing a single one. I didn't want to celebrate Christmas at all because I was like, I just want to focus on this. And I'll tell you right now, Christmas Day with your family is painful, like your extended family, because it's like everyone, it's like all these people that you love because they're your family, but also you got different personalities, and there's no alcohol to sort of silence some of the way, like their opinions, and especially different generations. So it was
and everyone
tough.
else is probably drinking as well, right?
Yeah, thankfully I don't have a really, really big drinking family. My my grandfather who died in 2019, other than he used to drink 30 schooners a day.
Holy shit.
Till he was 86 years of age. The last thing he said to me when he was in hospital, because we were going down to Westmead, just like the RSL there for lunch. He couldn't go, obviously, because he was in hospital. He said, "Oh, get me a schooner." And then I never saw him again.
Wow.
He died after that. And other than him, and he was such a lovely drunk. Like he loved us all. He was just amazing. And other than that, like there wasn't a lot of temptation, but at the same time, I don't want people to have to restrict what they're doing because of what I'm doing. And my family feels the same way. So they just did whatever they were going to do, which is fine. But I was just like so ready. And I didn't do that thing where you go, okay, I'm going to change for a bit here and I'm going to be an athlete, or I'm going to go train every day.
Sign up for High Rocks.
eat perfectly, because I feel like it's too overwhelming. And people go, this is all too hard and exhausting, because that is fucking hard. Like, to be
Mm.
strict, like my wife is so strict. I don't know how she does it, but it's what makes her tick, and I respect it. But I'm not like that. And I'm like, okay, well, so for that first week, I just said to myself, I'm going to eat whatever the fuck I want to eat. Okay. If I feel like exercise, I'm going to do it. If I want to go surfing, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to put the pressure on myself to go, oh, okay, I need to do 20Ks this week.
Mm.
Like, I need to eat healthy. That first week, I was like, because I felt like shit. I was like, I'm just going to ride this with food. And then I slowly introduced a little bit of exercise that I was comfortable with. And then all of a sudden it was a month. And I was like, fuck. The plan worked.
Mm.
It got me out of that. And then the next month came, and I thought, okay, well, I'm past all this really hard part, which is the craving and the habit and that stuff. But then, yeah, it went into the really hard part, which is, where you've got to do a lot of deep diving and a lot of self-reflection and a lot of, and my wife said to me, my moods were so bad. And
During this period of sobriety?
yeah. And I said to my wife, I said, I don't know who I'm going to be tomorrow. I don't know how I'm going to feel. I don't know how I'm going to feel this afternoon. If I just don't know. And I would crash and be like the worst version of myself and feel horrible. And I said to her, I remember we were going to like a parent-teacher interview, and we were just walking to the school on our own, just the two of us, and I just didn't want to be there. And I was like, this fucking sucks. There was no reason to be like that, other than what was happening in my head. And I said to her, I feel so bad that my mood, I'm deflecting it onto you guys. And she was like, I'd much rather you deflect this onto me than you being hungover tomorrow and deflecting that onto us, because that's much worse.
Mm.
And that hit really hard, because it sort of made me take responsibility for my prior actions. And I did feel really guilty about that I hadn't been able to give my kids all of me. And now that I can, I still feel guilty about it, but I feel proud that I'm working and building towards a much better relationship than I could have possibly ever had with them.
How often would you have been hungover?
Every day.
Yeah. And what did hungover Ash look like? Like, what was that energy like of a morning? Can you pinpoint it, or you think it wasn't as obvious to you as it was to them?
I felt like I was short, impatient, erratic, unpredictable, deceitful.
Did you feel ashamed of knowing that you'd woken up hungover again, and that was a consistent part of life?
You do this thing where you go, I'm not going to drink tonight. And then you do. And then you wake up and go, I said I wasn't going to drink last night, but I did. I'm not going to drink tonight. And then you do. And then you wait, and it's a cycle of, and then I'm really glad that I didn't slip any further, where it was like, that I'd given up, because that's what people do, right?
Absolutely.
They slide down to a point where they give up. And I had some dark moments and all sorts of things, but thankfully I picked myself up and was like, okay, I've never had a healthy relationship with alcohol. I've never been, I never got up in the morning and had a drink. Thankfully, I hadn't got to that point. It was more, I associated who I was with it. Like it was part of me. It's just who I am. When in fact, that was it talking, not me talking.
How does that play out from here on out then, right? Like your job is very social, and I have the greatest excuse in the world not to drink because I have liver disease. So nobody's going to badger me for not having a beer,
Yeah.
right? But I can imagine that when, you rock up at an event and the last time you were there was a year prior, and everyone knows you as Ash that loves a beer, and They know they can let loose with you and have a little bit of fun with you, and you're now in that environment again. Do you feel like there is going to be an identity crisis there? Do you feel resistance?
I always say now, and I'm learning to be better with this and to sit with it, is the thought is worse than the reality. So there's more, like, right now, I think to myself, I'm trying to learn to become more comfortable with the uncomfortable, and that's really uncomfortable for me. I'm much more socially awkward than I thought, but it's also got its positives because I'm way more quick-witted. I'm way more dialed into other people's emotions. I'm way more present, and it's so daunting to go places where you would have experienced it somewhat intoxicated in in any way, shape, or form, whether it's 2 beers, 10 beers, and now being completely, like, it just did the whole F1 completely sober, where I would have never ever done that. Do you know what? I went and saw Bad Bunny sober. I've never been to a concert sober. Never.
Yeah, wow.
And I did that. I wasn't going to go. And on the day of, I bought a ticket. I thought, I'm going to put myself in this position here. I'm so glad I did. The best thing I've ever seen. And I don't know if that's because I hadn't experienced anything so before like that. But it was like, yeah, you do this thing where you go, yeah, I'll go to this thing. And then everyone does this where it's the day of and you'll be like, I don't want to go. Right? And you got no real reason you don't want to go. It's just the thought of it. My mind would already be in the future, and my future is standing there awkwardly with no drink in my hand. And I'm finding that once I'm getting over that, no one gives a shit what you're doing. No one gives a fuck whether I'm drinking or not. Realistically, like and I was, my best friend Mike, who's I would always drink with. We went to primary school together. Our kids go to primary school together now. They're best friends. We lean on each other so much, and he's so good at joking about that he's lost his drinking buddy, but it makes me feel appreciated. Like, he makes me feel like he's like, oh, I lost my drinking buddy, but like he's still so present in my life and never would ever go, here you go. Like, he would never do that because he knows how my brain works. He knows I get a kick out of him pretending to be depressed that he's lost me. You know what I mean? It's just part of the humor. And same with Matt, my co-host, who's also one of my best friends. He's not a big drinker himself, and he's also holds space for me when I need it. So those sort of things have helped me overcome that fear of being the odd one out, because realistically, when you go to these places, you are the odd one out when you're not drinking, as you would know. But it's crazy how accepting of it that people actually really are. Or you might even get a message later on saying, hey, I think I need to have a break. And you're like, fuck, do it. Go and do it. Like, Theo Von puts it very blatantly. He goes, I don't drink or use for now. And it relieves so much pressure off him. And I feel that. When someone says to me, and I challenge anyone to do this, is have a break off alcohol and then tell someone that you don't drink. You will never be as proud of yourself in that moment, ever. And for me, I don't drink for now. It's not what I'm doing.
I like it. Let me ask, your relationship with April, you guys have been together for what, 15 years? A very long time. Something that I admire about you.
Thank you.
Is that because, as a recently married man, you look forward to a really long future with the person you love. How has your relationship developed? Because I feel like you were so young when you got together. And so you evolve and become a new person almost probably time and time again, which means your relationship evolves with it.
Yeah. A long time. I think with April, I always wanted April, right? And I think we just know each other so well. And we've always been really great at communicating. There's always been that open dialogue. There's always been change, but there's always been acceptance. Sometimes, when there's things about me she's not understanding, I use her to get it off my chest, and also for her she picks it up what I'm putting down and doesn't put too much pressure on me to be something that I'm not. She's always been so understanding of my brain and how it works, and if I'm not going through something, she's just like so nurturing. She's an amazing mum because of that too. I don't know. I feel like when you meet your person, it's so effortless that you don't really think about how the changes, how you adapt to the change. It just happens.
It's almost an unspoken agreement, right?
Exactly
They're
right.
going to roll with it.
I would say that we are as strong as if not stronger than we were 15 years ago or 10 years ago. I would say I feel, how do I put it? The pursuit of progress, even with that. Because you think you get stagnant in your relationship, and you start to feel different things and start to feel differently about people and start to talk to each other differently. That's not progress. I feel like progress is, if there's going to be change, which there is change, you have a kid, you completely change. You weather that storm, communicate, and come out the other side. You're both going to be stronger. If you don't weather that storm and don't communicate, there's no progress there. You just resent each other, and you might think that you've moved on to the next stage of your life, but subconsciously that resentment would sit there. There is nothing that I can honestly sit here and say that I don't love about my wife.
I love to hear that. Let me ask you, is there ever a feeling of guilt personally? Because you have, by most people's definition, a really fun job, right? And sometimes I can imagine your job, as mine does at times, feels like I'm just fucking around with mates.
All the
having
time
a conversation, right?
Yeah.
And there's sometimes where I feel, if a great opportunity comes up and, I've got some exciting stuff ahead the next couple of months, and I want to be able to take Soph with me because I want her to enjoy that too. And Soph has a job that she loves and adores, but some days are big days, and don't get me wrong, I've got a full-time job as well. So I get it. I get the dynamic of it. But do you ever feel like a little bit of guilt because sometimes for you work feels like play, and obviously you don't want to come home and unload that on your other half and make it feel like they should be envious or jealous of your position?
Yeah, I'm lucky that April loves to hear all about what happens and what I'm doing, and she gets a kick out of that. I think I've done so many different jobs in my life, like from apprentice painter to dodgy salesman to whatever it could be along the line. April's always said to me, she was like, do what you love and you won't work a day in your life. And now I'm here. And I never thought I would get here. That I do feel guilty sometimes when I feel like I'm not, when I'm stressed, and because there's so much more that goes behind all of this stuff that people don't see. I'm really lucky that I went into my podcast really naive and had Matt that could guide me through that. But there's so much that goes into it. So I have those days, and I have those down days, and I do feel guilty sometimes when I run past someone digging a hole. And I think I am so lucky with what I do. I'm so lucky that I persisted. I'm so lucky that I had my wife who supported me and said, go get after whatever it is that you want to do it. Because nothing is impossible. Nothing. Like you put your mind to something and get after it. It's not impossible. Your version of it is not impossible anyway. Like if I never, ever, ever thought in my entire life that I would be in this position with, I work for myself, I create things that I love, I talk about what I want to talk about, I do what I want to do without having to grind out with a job that I hate, that I have done before, but like it's really hard to be grateful without practicing it, and I'm trying to be better at that because to understand how lucky I am, but I also don't want it to just be about me. I want it to be about, I get like what fills my cup up is making other people happy. I'm a classic people pleaser like that, but I love that about me. I love that if someone's like, if someone in my life is struggling with something and that's like, okay, well, what fills my cup is allowing me to help you or, yeah, but I there's definitely times, I remember, what was it? It would have been, around that 60-day mark into this journey. And it was just like a morning run just to clear my head or whatever. And I ran past a bus stop with a bunch of tradies getting a bus into the city because it's just easier to do that than drive and park. And they all looked miserable. And I sort of ran past and I was like, good on them for, grinding at it. But then I started to feel like, I'm not appreciating what I do enough when I could be stuck in doing something that I don't love. And like like I said, I'm so grateful for and thankful for what I do now. And I have so much flexibility with my kids. I see my friends that have dropped their kids off at school and then pick them up at after school care at 5-6 o'clock at night. I think, fuck, that must be so hard. Yeah. It's a weird feeling where it's like, I never really think about what I've achieved. I just think about like what's next. And then, you have those moments where you feel like, okay, maybe I should appreciate this a little bit more.
It's funny, I won't quote you word for word, but the last time we caught up and you spoke about what was, new beginnings with all of this exciting work, you said something along the lines of, I never really considered myself a dreamer. Like you didn't really have high hopes for it. It kind of just happened as a product of you putting content out there.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's changed? Do you feel
For
like
sure.
you're more of a dreamer now?
Yeah, like I said, nothing is impossible now. I feel like I can achieve anything really if I wanted to. It's funny like how, like I said, I'm sort of operating with this brain capacity I've never had before. That I'm figuring out things that I never thought I could figure out. I had a conversation with Matt the other day, and he goes, I feel like I've struck gold because you sit in front of me every week and we have this conversation that's recorded. And he said that what you're giving back is unbelievable. Like he's like, I can't write anything down. I've just got to talk and respond and observe. And I feel like all of that is so heightened right now that I feel like I could do fucking anything.
Is there anything that you want to try that you haven't yet?
I want to drive a race car really fucking fast.
What type of car are we talking? We talking V8? Are we talking
the fastest
Formula?
thing I could possibly get my hands on.
You're a bit of an F1 fan, right?
I am an F1 fan, yeah. And I only really gained that hobby later, like that interest pretty late in life, the last couple of years. But
has Drive to Survive kickstarted that?
A little bit. I haven't finished it.
It's a very good show. It's very cool to see that. I feel like sport, we never really get to see behind the scenes of sport.
And peeping behind the curtain of something like that is unbelievable.
It is really cool. And I feel like that concept will play out in a bunch of different sports now, but there's something about the F1 where it is such a small field and there's so much competition, and because there's so much money, there is so much pressure involved that the stakes of it all just feel really fucking exciting.
Yeah.
And then I've never been into racing in my life, but the last 2 years, I've actually sat down and watched full F1 races
Yeah.
and enjoyed it because I feel like I understand what's happening now.
Yeah.
You hear them talk about different modes on their cars, and I even feel like this year with the battery change
Yeah.
and the way that all that works, you're like, oh, this is exciting.
Exactly right. And it's like, yeah, I don't know, something in me, I'm like, I'm like, I don't know, I feel like the exhilaration of that would be something that would be, it would feel amazing to accomplish that goal, just to do it. Like, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I really, really want to do. I'm sure there's a list somewhere in the back of my head, but I feel like this year I wanted to sort of put myself in experiences that I haven't done sober before, and I've started doing that, and it feels so good to get to the end of say an F1 weekend and have drank 1 million liters of sparkling water and done 50,000 steps and talk a leg off a chair, but have and be able to stand by every single word that I said and every action that I had, and not have a single regret the next day or the anxiety of it. But yeah, I purely think now that there isn't anything that I can't do if I really wanted to do it. And I'm sort of saying that to my kids now, where I'm like, hey, you want to be a soccer player, you could do that, man. Like, you can, the pursuit of progress, you
Powerful
progress.
thing.
Absolutely. And I feel like I'm right in the thick of that right now and enjoying it for sure.
Last thing I'll ask you before I let you go is a story I've told 1,000,000 times on the podcast before, but I've got the statue of David tattooed on my left arm. It's an amazing story from when Michelangelo sculpted the statue of David, that this piece of marble he used to sculpt it had been used people had attempted to sculpt something out of it 3 times before, but its imperfect grain and the difficulty of it just proved an insurmountable challenge. And so he took this piece of marble, took it away, carved away, and created one of the most famous statues in the world, the David. And upon unveiling this statue, there was this woman who was just struck by its beauty that she broke down into tears and asked him how he'd created something so beautiful from such imperfect stone. And he said, I always saw David in the marble. I just had to remove everything that wasn't him. And that idea of, I guess you can call it the David filter, of not always like what's something to add to my life, but what's something that I'd like to take away to get a better look at my truest essence. Is there something that you think you'd like to remove from your life moving forward?
Definitely the self-criticism. I feel like I'm gaining in confidence, but there's always those thoughts of that was shit. And it's just all those thoughts of doubts. I would love for that to be way more in my control or removed so that I can persist forward. Because there's always those moments where you're like, where it's sort of like they're the most prevalent when you're about to step up or level up. When you're about to level up to the next level, whatever it is that I'm doing, I feel like that voice there, the criticism, the negativity is there, which I can see is so easy to just succumb to. I would love the opportunity for that to not be there and see where I could get to.
There's a book titled The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, and a mate of mine recommended it to me. It's got a very similar concept to this, right, where he talks about what he calls the upper limit theory. And so he describes these 4 levels in which people operate throughout their life, and that top tier level is like genius level. It's people who are creating things that make the world a far better place and have provided a service beyond what any of us could have imagined in our wildest dreams. And those people who operate at genius level have breached any kind of upper limit. but there is this upper limit that we set ourselves that when we reach it, at whatever stage of life we're in, we begin to sabotage our way backwards into this place of comfort within
Yeah.
that current level. And I feel like we all have that until we become really conscious of it. I still have it in spades.
Mm.
And my relationship with it ebbs and flows. Sometimes I feel like I have the most self belief in the world, that nothing can stop me and I don't believe in any limits.
Mm.
And there's other weeks where you feel like you're on your own back about everything,
Yeah.
and you're pedaling backwards, despite the fact that you bug it out.
Mm. Do you think
And
it's there to build your character?
absolutely, the thing that has become, I guess an acknowledgement of mine or a thought or something that I feel like I've put my finger on, which makes sense, is after for so long thinking, how do I remove that? It was like, well, there are always distractions and there's always challenges and there's always going to be a bad day and there's always going to be a frustrating moment. But how can I fill my life with reminders of things that allow me to get back to a place of gratitude, presence,
Mm.
and optimism? And I think it's the things like my dog Barney, my wife Soph, my run in the morning where I actually tune out and get out and get some fresh air in the lungs and look around and remember how good things are. It's a little bit of time for self-reflection. It's all those things for me that remind me pretty quickly
Yeah.
of who I am, my truest essence, and what is great about life and the optimistic side of things. Because I just think we're in a world with so many distractions that
Mm.
it's so easy to be torn down and be pushed in the wrong direction.
For sure.
It's an ever-evolving journey.
Absolutely. It's like going back to that, being a complete man. Like, I don't think you could possibly be a complete man or a complete person
Mm.
until it's legitimately over. And like, you're gonna change. Your mindset's gonna change. Hopefully, for anyone listening, it's changing for the better, not for the worse. So, I think for me, this is the start of something big in terms of hopefully for me and my family is the priority. But like if I can achieve something that I can be content with at the end of the day, then that's another thing that's super important.
You're a good man, brother.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me on again.
Mate, my pleasure.
Appreciate it. Anytime too.